G'day guys, we have another detachment leaked early from the Chaos Space Marines Codex. I will be doing a full review breakdown of every detachment and every data sheet live this weekend. The information's up on the screen now, so make sure you pop that in your calendar and check that out. However, today what I'm going to be doing is breaking down the Dread Talon's detachment. So this is a detachment that's been leaked early. Let's get stuck into going through what this detachment's going to look like for the Chaos Space Marines.
Look for the Blood God.
G'day guys, I just wanted to take a second to talk to you about the exciting Blog for the Blood God fundraiser raffle, where you can buy tickets for your chance to win a set of neoprene objective markers and a pack of 50 Blog for the Blood God dice. If you'd like to buy some tickets, click on the link in the description of this video. You can scroll down and view the prizes there, and if you'd like to buy some tickets, select buy tickets, select how many tickets you would like to buy, select that you are over 18 and that you agree with the terms, and then I would recommend deselecting the subscription because who needs unnecessary emails, and then you can proceed to fill out your details. If you are an Australian resident, you will be required to select your state. If not, just select any state. It doesn't particularly matter, as long as the street address and details of postage are correct as per above. And then you can go through, proceed on payment, and then it will submit your ticket sales. The reason we've decided to do a raffle in order to raise funds is because this year I have been named as captain for Team Australia for the WTC World Team Championships of Warhammer 40k. This is a once-in-a-lifetime, really exciting opportunity for me. However, as an Australian, that trip is extremely expensive, and unfortunately, life does what it does and has thrown a bunch of unforeseen expenses my way in the terms of veterinary bills for my very sick cat. So any help that we can get to send me to Europe to represent Australia would be greatly appreciated. And also, if there's any money left over at the end, it will go towards improving the quality and frequency of the content here on YouTube. So I very much appreciate any support that you are prepared to give, and I look forward to rewarding that with some exciting prizes. If this does well, we'll do multiple of these raffles because I've got plenty of stuff to give away, and I really do want to show some support for the community that supports me so well. So thank you very much for your consideration. If you'd like to buy a ticket, links are in the description below, and let's get into today's video. Alrighty guys, we've got the detachment up on the screen now, so we're talking about a detachment that's sort of Night Lords-esque. This is built around morale shenanigans and some very fast-hitting in and out sort of strategies. So let's have a look at what we've got. So the detachment rule itself, apologies for it being a little blurry, this is a photo taken on a potato apparently. But basically it says, in the battle shock step of your opponent's command phase, if an enemy unit is below starting strength and within 12 inches of a Heretic Astartes unit from your army, that enemy unit must take a battle shock test. So similar to the Chaos Knights army detachment rule. And then we've got each time an enemy unit is within 12 inches of one or more Heretic Astartes units from your army, the battle shock tests subtract 1 from the result. So this is really good, and it's going to pair with Raptors because they have the same central abilities, so you're going to be able to put -2 leadership on your opponents, which is going to be really spicy for those battle shock tests. And then it's got a qualifier down here basically saying enemy units affected by this detachment rule do not need to take another battle shock test in the same phase. So basically this battle shock test that you're inflicting on your opponent replaces the standard battle shock test that they would need to take if they were below half strength in the command phase. As for detachment rules, I think this one's somewhat weaker than the others that we've seen so far, but it does still have its utility. Basically, the game plan here would be to put a little bit of damage onto as many things as possible, then charge in a big unit of Raptors or something like that, so that their whole army has taken some damage and is within 12 inches of that big Raptor unit or multiple Raptor units or whatever. And then you'd be basically trying to get a situation where in their command phase they just fail battle shocks across their whole army, they don't get to hold any objectives, they don't get to use any stratagems. This can be absolutely brutal when it pops off. However, you know, as you probably noticed from playing 40k for the last edition, that battle shock tests are relatively easy to pass often, and your opponent also is going to have a stratagem that they can use once per game to pass a particularly critical one. So I don't think this is that crazy, is that over the top, but it definitely has its utility, and there will definitely be some games where you're able to cause those battle shock tests and your opponent just fails everything. So that's really interesting. Let's have a look at the enhancements now. So we've got the Knight's Shroud. So this is a Chaos Lord model only, excluding Terminator models, and models in the Bearer's unit have the Stealth ability. That's pretty cool. If it's relatively cheap, I think this is something you would definitely consider. Being a neg 1 to hit is always a good defensive buff, but nothing too game-breaking there. Next, we have Heretic Astartes model only. This is the Wheelbreaker. In the fight phase, after the bearer has made attacks, select one enemy unit hit by one of those attacks. This unit must take a battle shock test. This is somewhat rubbish in my opinion, and the reason that is because it happens in the fight phase after you've made attacks. So chances are, even if you do inflict that battle shock test on them, that's happening at the very end, the very last thing that happens in your turn. It's going to then tick over to the opponent's turn, and they're going to be able to recover from that battle shock test. So being battle shocked at the end of the fight phase is pretty much completely irrelevant. There's a few niche situations where it's good. For example, if you have multiple units fighting, you might fight with this guy, battle shock him, and then the other unit hits and is going to gain access to some of the stratagems and things like that we'll talk about in a moment. So that's interesting. Or, you might be charging them, you might battle shock them, and then the next unit that charges they can't use stratagems against. They can't, for example, use the command interrupt or the whatever's counter-offensive stratagem. So you charge them, you hit them, they're battle shocked. Now they can't interrupt, which means your next unit gets to hit them as well. But again, you're banking on them failing a battle shock test, which granted, you will be making them at -2, so it's likely that that's going to happen, but it's not guaranteed, and therefore it's a risky play. Next, we've got the Warp-Fueled Thrusters. So this is a Jump Pack Chaos Lord model only. At the end of your opponent's turn, if the bearer's unit is not within engagement range of one or more enemy units, you can remove the bearer from the battlefield and place it into strategic reserves. So standard uppy downy, we've all seen this. I actually think this makes a strong case for just a Chaos Lord running around on his own, and you can use him similar to how people in Imperial armies use like a Calidus assassin, where it's like he somewhere sits in the backfield, he's able to threaten and bully things that come into your backfield, and then on that turn, when you're expecting to draw behind enemy lines or deploy teleport homers or something, he can just go up and then drop straight back down. It's also worth noting that this will allow you to drop in them turn 1, because if your opponent goes first at the end of their first turn, you can pick him up, and then it goes into your first turn. He's in strategic reserves, and because he started the game on the table, he's eligible to arrive via that deep strike. It is worth noting that it's the bearer's unit can be picked up, so that's actually pretty cool. You can put him in a big unit of Warp Talons or something like that, and at the end of your opponent's turn, pick up the whole unit, and then drop the whole unit down and charge in. So there's some really interesting stuff there. However, charging from deep strike is one of those things that's not often reliable way of playing the game. So it's cool, it's gimmicky, I like it. Then we have Eater of Dread, Heretic Astartes model only. At the start of your command phase, if the bearer is on the battlefield, roll a d6, adding 1 to the result for each battle shock enemy unit on the battlefield, and on a 5+, you gain 1 CP. Again, this is, it's relatively risky because it does rely on your opponent being battle shocked to be, any form of reliable. And I've also said this many times before, that CP regeneration, because it's capped at once per battle round, and you're likely to be taking tactical objectives, and therefore you might be discarding to generate CP that way, or you might have Abaddon, you might be generating CP that way. You might not necessarily find that this generates the CP that make it worthwhile taking. However, sometimes that 1 additional CP can make or break a game plan, and so it's definitely something that if it's priced effectively, if it's only like 10 points and you've got a character, there's no reason not to take this. Speaking of CPs and using your command points effectively, let's have a look at the stratagems that are available in this, because there's some pretty interesting stuff in here. So we've got something Cruelty. Sorry, it's quite blurry there, and there's a glare over the screen. But this stratagem is used in the fight phase. It's 1 Heretic Astartes infantry unit from your army that has not been selected to fight yet this phase. And then it's until the end of the phase, each time this uses an attack that targets a battle-shocked enemy unit or a unit that's below half strength, you can increase the armor penetration characteristic by 1. So this is what I was talking about earlier with being able to inflict those battle shock tests in the fight phase. If you do that with the first unit, then the second unit is going to be able to gain access to this stratagem. And also, if your opponent's turn they fail a lot of battle shock tests, then with your second wave that you send in, you're going to be able to use this stratagem. And +1 AP is really good on things like Raptors, Warp Talons, those sort of units. Very effective. So that's cool as. Next we have Bloody Example. So it's used in the fight phase just after Heretic Astartes unit from your army kills a character unit. You target it on your Heretic Astartes unit, and each enemy unit within 12 inches of that unit must take a battle shock test. So this is similar like to the previous thing where it was like you're doing battle shock tests in the fight phase, which is the worst possible time to do them. However, this one is a 12-inch aura. So you go in, you kill one of their characters for 1 CP, everything within 12 inches has to take a battle shock test. That's pretty cool. It allows you to line up those combos with the other, bits and pieces. Then we have Pitless Hunters. 1 CP, use it in your shooting phase on a Heretic Astartes infantry unit from your army that has not shot yet this phase. Until the end of the phase, each time your unit makes an attack and it targets a battle shocked or below half strength unit, you can reroll the wound roll. So again, all of these are bringing back to that battle shock. So you need to be able to take lots of Raptors. You need to be inflicting those battle shock tests very often so that you can gain utility from these stratagems. And this one, when you do, it's going to be fantastic. Rerolling the wound rolls in the shooting phase, that's absolutely fantastic. I'm thinking a unit of Havocs with all chain cannons just getting 1 billion shots with reroll wounds. It's really, really spicy. Or, anything that's going to have access to dev wounds, that's also really, really spicy as well. So there's some really interesting stuff in there. Relentless Terror is the next stratagem, 1 CP. It's in your movement phase. Select a Heretic Astartes infantry unit that has fallen back. And that unit is able to declare a charge, in which turn it fell back. So that's pretty cool. Fall back and charge is also one of those things that's really fantastic, because it means if you do charge into something, do a bunch of damage, pile into or consolidate into another unit, then in their turn, they decide that they want to stay there, or maybe in their turn, they want to charge something like a Rhino into your Raptors. That can be really annoying because the Raptors are unlikely to kill the Rhino, and therefore in your turn, those Raptors are not going to be able to charge the enemy units that you want to because they're tied up with this Rhino. This is going to make that really, really good. And it also means that when you fall back and then charge back in again, you get the charge bonus. So you're going to get to fight first in that phase. Whereas if you stayed in combat with something, your opponent would be able to fight before your Raptors or whatever it is. So being able to fall back and charge is a really, really powerful thing. And that's only 1 CP, so that's fantastic. Then we have Screaming Descent. So it's in your reinforcement step of your movement phase. You select 1 Heretic Astartes jump pack unit from your army that was in reserves. Set it up anywhere horizontally 3 inches away from enemy units, but until the end of the turn you're not eligible to declare a charge. And then also any enemy infantry and mounted units within 6 inches, I believe it is, have to take a battle shock test. So a 3-inch deep strike is fantastic. Unfortunately, this is limited to jump pack units, so you can't use it on things like obliterators, you can't use it on things like terminators. It has to be on the jump pack units, and you can't charge after you do it. So not massive amount of utility there because, generally speaking, these units want to get into combat. However, there's a few ways that you can use this that are really interesting. One of them is it gets you your behind enemy lines and your deployed teleport homers very easily. You can use it to deny your opponent objectives, because often when your opponent's holding an objective, they might have like a Rhino on an objective, and if you can drop within 3 inches away from that Rhino, your chances of getting 3 of your Raptors on there to get more OC on the objective than your opponent and take that from them is very high. So even if you don't make the charge, it doesn't really matter because you've taken the objective and that was your goal in the first place. So that's really interesting. And also, it allows you to do interesting things like screening out your opponent. If your opponent's got all these things dotted all over the board, you can then drop a big unit of 10 Raptors or 10 Warp Talons and string it out and get real close to them, so that then when they go to move, they have to move all the way around your Raptors if they were trying to charge you off of an objective or something like that. So you might move like a Rhino with some Legionaries onto an objective, and then deep strike 3 inches away from their big scary thing and wrap yourself around it, And now, if they want to try to charge those guys, they actually have to go backwards to get around your, your Warp Talons or your Raptors. So that's really cool. I really like that one. It's a shame that you can't charge after it. I understand. I would have probably rather see something like drop 6 inches away, but be eligible to charge. Sort of like what the Chaos Demons have access to. But yeah, still very, very cool. Alright, and then our last one is Merciless Pursuit. At the end of your opponent's movement phase, select one Heretic Astartes infantry unit from your army that's not within engagement range of enemy units. And select one enemy unit that fell back this turn within 6 inches of that unit. And you can declare a charge as if it were your charge phase. When doing so, you can only select the target that fell back as the target of the charge. And you don't receive the charge bonus. So this one is absolutely fantastic. So basically what you're going to be able to do here is you're going to be able to charge into something, and then when they go to fall back in their movement phase, you're going to be able to declare a charge again into that unit, which means that you're going to be able to keep your infantry unit locked in combat with them for consecutive turns. This is fantastic. It's very similar to an old Black Legion stratagem that we used to have that allowed us to do the same sort of thing, although the Black Legion one, it merely allowed you to make a consolidate move, whereas this is going to allow you to make a charge move, as long as your opponent ends within 6 inches. So what you're going to want to do with this is you're going to want to make sure that you don't just hit them line up like that, because then they're going to move back. They might move back 7 or 8 inches, and now you can't, they're not within 6 inches, so you can't use the stratagem. So what you're going to want to do is when you charge things, you're going to want to make sure that you wrap around it as much as you can, so that when they do fall back, there's nowhere that they can end that fallback move that's further than 6 inches from you, and then you're going to be able to go, cool, 1 CP, and I charge in, and I tie you up. It's also worth noting that this one isn't tied to jump pack units, so this is really cool on things like Possessed, things like Chosen, even things like Terminators, being able to just go in, charge things, wrap them, do damage to them, and then your opponent can't shoot you because you're in combat, and if they try to fall back, you can just chase them down, keep them locked in combat. This is an absolutely fantastic stratagem, and if it's used well, it's going to win games. So I think this is actually the key to the detachment. You're going to want to use the battle shock tests. You're going to want to use multiple units of Raptors to try to battle shock out your opponent so that you can then deal damage with things. But then you're going to want one big scary bully unit, whether it be Terminators, whether it be Possessed, whether it be Chosen, something to that effect. And then you're going to want to use that to lock them in combat and stay in combat with them for the duration of the game. Absolutely brutal. Alrighty guys, that's my first thoughts, my first impressions on the Dread Talon Detachment. I think this one is on par with the previous detachments that we've seen. I think it's got some real utility. This one's a little bit more tricky than it is raw power. I think this one's going to be doing things like morale shenanigans, battle shock shenanigans, and also tying your opponent up, 3-inch deep striking. It's got a lot of tricks to it that are going to make it really interesting to play. However, it's not going to bring a lot in terms of raw damage. So it depends on what your personal playstyle is. If you like the raw damage, you might go for the Soul Shatter, Warpack or whatever it was called, the Demon Engines detachment. But if you like to play those tricky games where you put your opponent in positions where they can't really do much, because if they try to fall back, you're going to chase them. They can't shoot you. Then you're going to 3-inch deep strike away, block all their movement. Meanwhile, you're inflicting battle shock tests everywhere, and you just create absolute nightmare situations for your opponent. If that's the type of play you like, then this detachment is going to be a ton of fun. I really think this has got some serious teeth, and I think it's going to be a ton of fun to play. So with that being said, I'm going to wrap it up here. I do have a full live stream coming up this weekend where I'm going to be going through every detachment in the codex, every data sheet, and go through all of the changes live on camera, so you'll be able to interact, you'll be able to ask your questions, and we'll get stuck right in. We'll sink our teeth in nice and deep. I'll put the times on the screen. It's this Sunday Melbourne time, which is this Saturday for most people. So check that out, put it in your calendar, and join me, and we'll have a really great conversation about these new exciting Chaos Space Marines. And throughout the day, if any more detachments come up, I will be, updating you guys on those rules as they come through. So with that being said, thanks for tuning in, and I will see you in the next one. Cheers.
The Warhammer community suffers from some of the most prohibitively expensive essentials in the world, especially Australian content creators. Every single day, Dean wants to create content, but he can't. suffering from old, worn-out brushes, expensive model kits, and costly software and equipment he can't endure much longer. Just look at this dirty paint water. Would you drink this? Would you let your child? Even a small monthly donation can help provide Dean with clean paint water, basic tools for survival, and access to life-saving information and education. So please, follow the links in the description below and find out how you can sponsor a mad cunt like Dean today and end the suffering. Suffering that is cruel, unsustainable, and your fault.
Blog for the Blood God exclusive high quality dice. Blog for the Blood God exclusive high quality dice. Blog for the Blood God exclusive high quality dice. Hi, I'm Dean Simbeck, President and CEO of Blog for the Blood God's exclusive high quality dice warehouse and emporium. Due to a shipping error, I'm currently overstocked with Blog for the Blood God exclusive high quality dice, and I'm passing the savings on to you! Roll 9-inch charges, pass invulnerable saves, roll high for damage, and score lots of hits. Check out the links in the description of this video to pick up your set today. Do your objective markers ever get lost behind terrain or other models and become difficult to see? Do they ever get bumped and accidentally moved during a game? And do they ever spark arguments about distances? Well, not anymore. Introducing the Blog for the Blood God, not even remotely patented neoprene objective markers. Made from the same material as astronaut suits, or maybe military equipment, or probably neither of those things, this 2mm thick neoprene synthetic rubber is tear resistant, water resistant, and is designed to last. But that's not all. The Blog for the Blood God, not even remotely patented neoprene objective markers come in a variety of different designs and styles to suit any faction represented in the Warhammer 40,000 universe. These objective markers are a perfect gift for yourself or a friend, and are a perfect way to flex and show your opponent that not only are you a smarter, cooler, and better 40k player than them, but you also have more disposable income than they do. For the low price of $25, you'll get not one, not two, but 6 neoprene objective markers, perfectly designed for 10th edition Warhammer 40k. Follow the links in the description of this video to pick up your set today.